so excited to introduce our next panel on e-patient, the e-patient revolution. And first I'd like to introduce our moderator, Indu Sabaya. And where are you? There you are, right there. So a little bit about her. She is an MD, MBA, and co-chairman and CEO of Health 2.0, and we're very excited to be partnering with Health 2.0 because technology is one of the premier things that we're going to need to be able to leverage across this very complex disease, multiple disease states, and multiple science and multiple outcomes, and I think that right as we see technology grow, that will help give us the tools to address this a lot better. She drives the strategic technology innovation and co-curates a worldwide series of conferences, code-a-thons, prize challenges, and more. And prior to founding Health 2.0, she was entrepreneur in residence at Physic Ventures, a consumer health and wellness investment fund. So how about I just bring you up and then you can introduce the panel.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everybody. It's really wonderful to be here at this very special gathering. And it's my honor to have a discussion with my co-panelists this afternoon, who I'm going to introduce you to momentarily. And my job is to, technology is not the driver in this community and in this mission of ours collectively, but we think of it as an enabler. And we hope we all get to see it as a set of resources and tools that can help what we're all trying to do. And increasingly, from when we first started Health 2.0, and I'll tell you a little bit about Health 2.0, to now, we started in 2007, the number of tools and the number of resources have just grown exponentially, and it's really wonderful to see tools not just being used by patients, but also by caregivers across the spectrum. So with that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about who's joining me here for this wonderful panel. We've got first Gilles Friedman, who's somebody with a very long history in the e-patient movement. Gilles was the founder and organizer of ACOR, a series of listservs for folks living with cancer, and since then has gone on to co-found Smart Patients with Ronnie Zeiger, who's sitting to his left, who previously, in his previous incarnation, was chief health strategist at Google Health, and has been a real leader and visionary in the space of how technology and healthcare can really come together. And I'm going to give them a little bit more of a formal introduction when they give you their presentations, but just a quick overview for now. And we also have a very important component to this discussion with us, and that is somebody that has really felt the role of being an empowered patient in her journey. We have Julia Hallisey. She's actually by profession a dentist in San Francisco, but it was in 1989 when her life changed and put her on the path she's now when she lost her late daughter Catherine to a diagnosis of cancer when Catherine was just 5 months old. And dealing with that journey has led her to start a 25-year career in this space, and she's now the founder and leader of the Empowered Patient Coalition. So we're going to hear her perspective and how it fits in to this really incredible space. And before I give each of them a chance to present to you, and then we'll all have a discussion, and I hope you'll ask lots of questions and get involved in our conversation, I thought I'd open up with a few slides just to show, from our perspective at Health 2.0, how we see this technology landscape helping to empower patients and how patients are taking advantage of these tools and putting it to use. So I think I will ask for my slides to go up. So just a little bit about Health 2.0. Primarily, we run a series of conferences, as I was saying, around the world, all focused on the role of technology empowering people to make health and healthcare better. And we've done this since 2007. We're small. We're a little company run by 9 people, but we work really hard because our mission is to improve health and healthcare using technology. We also run competitions, and this might be important for folks in the room. There are a number of entrepreneurs and developers out there who want to build tools and solutions but don't know what the challenges and problems are that patients face. And so we run competitions where organizations, it could be a patient association or a foundation, put up a challenge and they say, we haven't found a good enough solution to this problem. And folks build solutions to this and we award prize money for that. And that's our prize competition program. And we also track the space. So when we first started, and I think Ronnie and Gilles were at our first conference in 2007, we thought of this digital health revolution of just getting started. But since that time, over 3,000 companies have mushroomed up in the space in 19 categories. Not just patient-focused tools, but as I was saying earlier, tools that are helping providers improve their workflow, make smarter decisions, connect with patients better. So the space is something we're tracking very closely. And we also have chapters, self-organizing groups of volunteers who meet in 75 cities around the world. And what they share is a passion to improve health using technology. And so they're kind of digital health entrepreneurs, if you will. And they're patients, doctors, business folks, researchers, et cetera. So the definition of Health 2.0, we sort of think of these, a three-part definition. One is technology has to be adaptable, and I think we all relate to this, whatever hat we're wearing in the audience today. If my health record, for example, is stuck, in a silo in a hospital, it does me no good. If I can't bring it home, connect with it on my laptop, on my mobile phone, technology can't be standalone, and we use that as a criteria for what we mean by a Health 2.0 technology. It has to adapt and play well with other technologies in the ecosystem. It has to have a really, really strong focus on the user experience, whether that means folks are older, younger, dealing with language issues. And we're seeing so much of that changing in healthcare, thank goodness, but we all can probably identify with technologies that are just impossible to navigate and very difficult. And finally, data, which I'm sure you're hearing a lot about, and we'll hear a lot about over the next few days in different ways. Tools that are using data to help drive decision making, whether that's a choice you as a patient or a caregiver have to make, or a choice a physician makes in partnership with you. So one of our most important cornerstones of Health 2.0, and when we launched, Patients Like Me, and I'm sure many folks in the room have heard of them, was at our first conference, and they are kind of a signature example of an online community. Gilles, sitting here, probably one of the oldest online communities in health with ACORE, thousands and thousands of folks just using email to communicate and share narrative stories around cancer. This patient community category has now grown to so many, many examples. Just a few here, from MS to autism to Asperity, which helps you find your cancer twin, people with the same profile as you in your disease. So hopefully we can share those experiences and more. And of course, the latest screenshot from Patients Like Me. And today you'll hear from Ronnie and Gilles, who will show you another example of a patient community that's getting people together to connect with the research and pharmaceutical industry. The second big trend we're seeing at Health 2.0, how many of you in the audience have some type of tracker that you use to either count your steps or monitor your heartbeat? We'd love to see a show of hands. There you go. That's really interesting. A few years ago, that number would have been a lot smaller. And those of us probably following this thought, well, there was the quantified self movement, people who really tracked sometimes as much as 50 data points about themselves every day. And many thought, well, that's just an interesting trend limited to very few numbers of people. And now we can really say that self-tracking has gone mainstream. As you can see, more and more people follow that. So whether it's through wireless weight scales, something you're wearing around your wrist, something that's tracking your sleep, this is really, really adding lots and lots of data to the system, and we're only beginning to learn about the insights. 60% of US adults track something about their health in the diet exercise category alone, but 7 in 10 adults overall, Susanna Fox tells us from Pew, are tracking for health. Not everyone is using a smartphone. Tracking for health could be writing it down on a piece of paper or even keeping track of it mentally, but it's important to see that people are really engaged, they care. And interestingly, even those with chronic conditions are tracking at about the same percentages. And now that's, of course, 45% of the US population, believe it or not, living with a chronic disease. This community, of course, is slightly different, being the rare disease community. But I think it'll be very interesting to see how tracking behaviors apply in this subset, and to see if those statistics hold true. This is just a picture of my husband, who self-tracks, has tracked every meal he's eaten for the last 365 days and more. And I share that story because I witness it every day. And it's such an example of an engaged patient, sometimes not as engaged in the conversation we're having because he has to look down over date night and enter his food. But this is now, just in one example, I think MyFitnessPal, which is this example used, 30 million users, 30 million people using this every day. That's going to yield some really, really compelling insights as we move forward. Another important trend that we're seeing is this idea of remote monitoring. And we just talked about sensors that you may wear on your body, but we also have to think of sensors in the home. This is very important, especially if you're in a caregiving role. There are going to be tools now that can monitor movement, that can be placed on a refrigerator, allowing you to track your loved one if you're not in the same city as them. That's Lively on the right, which is that home sensing device. And on the left, a tool that helps you track medications. I'm sure that's an issue for many, many people in the room, and it is an issue for many people in general. But there's many, many solutions now, not just to help keep track of medications that you're taking yourself, but allow you to trigger and remind someone that you're caring for, keeping track of that. And so we're really interested to see how this field evolves. This was an interesting, how many of you have heard of just Uber? Uber, the company that's disrupting the cab industry, a few of us. But we took a poll to see how many companies this year alone would call themselves the Uber of healthcare, meaning some type of company that's disintermediating the connection with a doctor, making it easier, faster, more efficient to get to the healthcare services you need. And we found something like 12 just in the last year alone. But this is an important development. And from the beginning of working on Health 2.0 with the folks on the panel, the role of the caregiver was the care provider was important, but now you can have video conferences with a doctor, text messaging, and diagnostic tools through smart questionnaires that make that visit much more meaningful when you actually get there, as most of healthcare, as Gilles and others will say, happens in between doctors' visits. This is just an example of how decision-making through smart questionnaires can help with diagnosis. And just a word about the new augmented reality you may hear about as you go about your days reading the paper and watching television. Increasingly, I used to think this was science fiction and years and years out, but we're seeing the role of avatars in health. This is Ellie on the right. She is being used right now in folks with PTSD and in the VA with veterans, because she can detect depression through a sophisticated analysis of the face just by interfacing with you on a screen, and she's a robot. But incredible science behind her, and many people have stigma and issues with coming in for visits to clinics and hospitals for these diagnoses, and these types of new interfaces can help. And of course, Google Glass is now being used in healthcare. One example of that is in people who have declining memory issues with dementia. Google Glass might, for example, be able to send a photo, a reminder note of who the person is seeing in the room, so they can be reminded of who they are and help with some of these memory aids. So some fascinating advancements in this world of augmented reality. And just more examples of patient data driving decision making. Lumiata is a company that was just founded a few months ago, aggregating data across your health plans, your medical records, your personally entered data, and coming up with new insights that otherwise would have been missed. And I think in the rare disease world, we're dealing with this huge problem of knowledge gaps. And sometimes the answer is there, it's just not aggregated and presented for people to make sense of. And some of these new tools with their visualizations are really possibly going to be able to help us. And so I just wanted to give a bit of an overview of the trends we're seeing and the tools and opportunities that are out there to take advantage of. And if you sort of are interested in the space and would like to learn more, please, you can drop me a note or drop us a note, indu@health2con, or connect with one of the organizers to put you in touch, and we'd love to invite you to the upcoming conference in San Francisco, in Santa Clara, actually. So thank you very much, and with that, I'm going to now open it up to our panel, and you're going to hear about some very interesting perspectives. And I think first up, I'm going to introduce Ronnie, who will give us an overview of what he's been working on and his perspectives in this field, and you'll hear a little bit about his company, Smart Patients. Okay.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thanks, Ronnie.
So, thank you. I have a few slides, but I want to give a little bit of context first, so the slide wizards can take their time in getting things going. So I am a recovering physician, and actually I still do a little bit of clinical practice, but I've been in the software world for really the last big chunk of my career, and I wanted to share sort of a personal aspect of my professional path. So I was working at Google from 2006 to 2012, and one of the things that I did there